Right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to, let's see, what is today again? Anybody? Is today the 6th? 5th? 6th. Today's the 6th. I think it's the 6th. Today is September the 6th, 2014. This is Neighborhood Nerds Tech Talk, Computer Basics. So a little bit of what we're going to be going over today. This class is exactly what it sounds like. It is talking about what is a computer, what does it do, how does it work for you. What can it do? What doesn't it do? Things like that. We're going to talk about a little bit about the difference between, what is a computer, what's not a computer. We're going to talk about different operating systems, different types, things like that. And before we go any further, I'm going to turn off the lights so we can see a little bit better. There we go. And at some point, we're going to figure out how to get these lamps out of the way too. We're going to have a nice setup. Okay. All right. So, as I was talking about, a computer is a lot of things. That's meant to represent a computer, a laptop, a tablet, and a smartphone. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. So, all right. So this is a little bit of what we're going to go over here. This is our timeline. We're just a few minutes behind. That's okay. We're not going to go too far. Come back. Well, in a minute, I'm going to show you our timeline. See, even we have technical difficulties sometimes. There we go. Okay, so intro, we've already kind of talked about that. We're going to talk about computers, different types. We're going to have some coffee time in case anybody needs to get some refills. We're going to talk really briefly about the history of computers, just kind of give you a broad overview of where these all come from. And then we're going to talk about how you can get in touch. I think most everybody here knows how to get in touch with us. We're going to review that just a little bit. So, real quick, a little bit about us. I think, is everybody here a member? I'm still getting used to everybody's names and faces, but I think everybody here is a member, right? Okay. So this was kind of meant more for people who aren't members, just as a little bit of information about us. And this is something also you feel free to tell your friends and family who are not members. That they can actually still come to the Tech Talks. Now, being a member, it's included as part of your package. But if you are a non-member, there is a small fee. It's not too terribly much, but they can come in and sit in and take it in and see what they think about it. So, real quick, this is I think everybody knows. Does everybody know who Gizmo is? Our mascot. Is everybody familiar with that? That's okay. That's something that we like to talk about a lot. Gizmo's a platypus. He wears his nerd glasses. But a platypus is a mammal who lays eggs, builds dams. He lives on land. He lives on water. Basically, it's just saying he does everything. So that's kind of how we view ourselves. So we've been around since 2012, helping clients achieve their technology hopes and dreams right here in the middle of Sequoia Hills. Yeah, so that's a little bit about us. I think you guys have a pretty good handle on who we are. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here, would you? All right, so getting to know computers. So what we're looking at here, it's with a few keystrokes, all the information in the world is at our fingertips. Computers have made knowledge more accessible than ever. So that's referring to search. That's kind of what I was joking around with earlier. Anymore, it seems like, at least with my friends, having an iPhone or a tablet or something is more than anything, it's an argument ender. So it's which is good and bad, but we play trivia. The nerds play trivia some nights at some local restaurants and bars, and they have to constantly be reminding people that the point is to remember things and not to look it up on your smartphone. And if you look it up on your smartphone, you get kicked out of the game. But yeah, it's kind of funny how it works that way. It's the internet more than anything to me has ended all arguments. Just who won the World Series in 1975? Well, give me a second. I'll look it up real quick. You don't have to remember things like that. There's good and there's bad. I think it's more good than anything else. But what about commerce? So online shopping, yes, you can thank computers for that. Computers have changed how we do business and communicate. That's pretty obvious. I'm from Kansas, so when I go back for Christmas, I don't shop here and then drive a carload of stuff back to Kansas. I just shop online and ship it to my mom's house and have her wrap the presents, of course, so I don't have to deal with it. She offers. She's a sweet lady. So many different things. It's business and commerce and communication, whether it's Skyping with family or doing FaceTime with family, doing some online shopping. all of your investments, all of your banking. I know, Dr. Kesterson, you were talking about, I think you're using some software that you use for your work.
Yes.
Yeah, it's vital to how we do things. Just as an example, if we didn't have internet, we wouldn't be able to do hardly anything here at Neighborhood Nerds. Everything that we do is based online. All of our bookkeeping, most of our bookkeeping, we have backups, of course, but so many things are based online, and we can thank computers for that. If we didn't have these, it'd be a lot more difficult. And then this one, this is actually going to be a different tech talk someday. We will get to that a little bit more, and we can dive in a little bit more in depth. But the cloud. So with the cloud, people can connect to one another quickly and easily, like never before. Access to your own files has never been so convenient. So does anybody have iCloud set up, or there we go, we got one.
In fact, I just got a reminder to sign up for my $40 additional for more space.
Gotcha.
Is cloud, is that particular just an Apple product?
Nope. The cloud is a, excuse me just a second. There we go, sorry. It can be that, yeah. The cloud is a general term, so Apple calls theirs iCloud. Amazon has their own cloud service. Google Drive is another one that we use a lot. That is another cloud service. Think about it this way. The cloud is basically, it's a way of remotely accessing all of your files. So they don't necessarily have to live. So all of my emails, actually, that's a great example. All of my emails, they don't live on my phone. There's not all of those files are stored on my phone. They're accessible through the cloud because they're being stored physically somewhere else. It gets a little complicated when you start looking at things like that, but another good example would be all different documents and things that you can store. It's actually being stored physically somewhere else. It's being stored on a server, but then you're just accessing it through the internet. So instead of it living right in your hand, it's living somewhere else, and you can access it over the air. So it's kind of an odd concept to think about it, especially when we've always had, filing cabinets and bookshelves and things like that where we physically have all of our stuff. Well, now all of that stuff is electronic and it just lives somewhere else. We can access it through this guy. So, yeah.
So it's everything, all my documents, photos, emails, everything's in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
It's also backed up on an external hard drive and also on Carbonite.
Yes.
Why do I need all three?
That's a great question.
Why do I have Carbonite?
Mm-hmm.
I know the external hard drive, if lightning hits it, that's pretty much worthless. There's nothing stuff stored there.
Yeah.
So there's the Carbonite. But why the cloud?
Carbonite is actually a cloud-based service because it's being stored. It's something that's going over the air, which is through Wi-Fi or over the internet. So a good reason to have all of those is, like I said, having redundant backups of everything. If you have an external hard drive, that's a great way to back up your computer. But if lightning strikes it, or heaven forbid, your house would burn down or something like that, which I have some friends who had that happen. They lost all their stuff. But with Carbonite, that's being stored somewhere else. So if your house burns down and your computer and your hard drive is in it, everything's being stored with Carbonite. So that's good to have extras.
What's the difference, I guess, between Carbonite and the cloud?
Carbonite is in the cloud. So Carbonite, again, is kind of like iCloud. iCloud is Apple's version of it. Carbonite backup system is that company's, it's Carbonite's version of the cloud. Just like Amazon and Google have their own cloud.
So is there any reason to have both?
Just better safe than sorry. Just in case something would happen. It's good to have both. It's not absolutely necessary.
Okay, so if I didn't have iCloud, for example, a year ago, I drowned both these devices.
Yeah.
It was really easy through iCloud to put everything.
Yep.
Not so easy through Carbonite to try to do that.
No, Carbonite it takes a little longer. It's a little clunkier. But yeah, having iCloud on your phone means that you can bring that back down, all that personal information back at any time. So, yeah. So I tell you what, let's
Okay.
kind of table that question. Like I said, we do have another tech talk about it, but it's also something that this is part of what we want to have. We want to start those conversations, and that's part of the reason that we wanted to give you that scratch paper to get people thinking. And that's a great example of something that I think on a one-to-one basis we can probably investigate that a little bit more and say, is this what I need? Is this utilizing all of these different devices the best way? Things like that. So. Great questions. We can definitely get into that a little bit more later on. All right.
Hard drive. What? External hard drive?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask a question to everybody here, and I just want to hear. There's no pressure, but I want to hear from everybody. How do you use a computer? We already talked about it a little bit, so don't give it away. But everybody else, just feel free to shout it out. How do you use a computer? Poorly. Poorly is that's a good answer, but
Dictionary, encyclopedia, communication.
Great. Anybody else?
Business, social.
Yep.
Social network.
Okay.
Each up, I get on it and I can.
Okay. How about in the front row here, ladies?
I just use mine to get my emails.
Okay. Great.
I'm not good about saying. You get information.
Yeah.
Some word processing.
Okay. All right.
Lots of things. Bills,
Yeah.
access fine.
Awesome. So that's what's fun about this. There you go. So that's what's fun about this question. Is we were joking around earlier. There's no wrong answer. It does whatever you want it to do. So I always just like to kind of ask people, what is it that you do? So those are all great options. These are just a few things that we wrote down. Documents, email, and the web, publishing music, books, art, and connecting with friends and family. The middle one, I don't use that a whole. I don't ever use that. I'm not very artistic. I'm not very creative. But I do use the first and the third one. I had the good pleasure of my family back home. My little nieces and nephews know how to use Skype on my older brother's computer. So periodically, I'll just get this random Skype call, and it's my 6-year-old niece. She's just like, I want to show off my princess dress and things like that. And so that's one of my favorite things about it. So I also use it as photo management. I guess that's as creative as I get. As I have like 14,000 photos, and I need a place to store that. I have it on my computer. I have 10,000 songs in my iTunes library. I need a place to store all of those. So like I said, there's no wrong answer. It is whatever you want it to do. All right, so let's kind of go over some basics of what exactly is a computer. So a computer can be found in a desktop form, laptop form, or tablets and smartphones. It should be pretty standard knowledge. Desktops and laptops, that's usually what we think of when people reference a computer. But technically, a computer is anything that computes. And Tommy could bore you to tears with some of this stuff, or I shouldn't say bore you to tears, but Tommy's a computer science major. He's obviously a whiz at all this stuff. He can tell you how all of that computing happens. I don't know. I just know how they work. I don't know how it works inside. I just know how it works when we're looking at it. That's my role here. So, but a tablet and a smartphone. So, this MacBook Air that I'm working on, that's a computer. This iPhone that I'm using to control this slideshow, that's a computer. Your iPad, the iPad over there, those are all computers as well. They just come in different forms. But we can also look at TVs, game consoles, and servers. So TVs, for example. Does anybody have a smart TV, like a Samsung TV that has the different apps, like Netflix and Pandora built into it, anything like that? There we go, we got one. What's that? Yep, absolutely. That'd be the same thing. So a smart TV is a computer. It obviously shows our cable and everything like that, but it's computing different commands. So that's a computer as well. Game consoles like my PlayStation at home, my buddy's Xbox, or my little brother's Nintendo Wii, those are all the same thing, or my original Nintendo from 30 years ago that I still have. Or a server. That's getting a little more advanced, but a server is something, it's a giant computer that holds millions and millions of bytes of information that allows to get our email and things like that. So, and that's going a little more in depth. One other thing that we actually don't have on here that we're really big fans of, this little guy, it's not the projector, but it's just to the left of our projector. It's this little tiny black box called an Apple TV. Is everybody familiar with that? Does anybody else have one of those? There we go. I got one. So an Apple TV is basically, then we can go in more in depth on that later on, but it's a little tiny device that basically I'm beaming all this information from my computer. It's being sent wirelessly to the Apple TV. The Apple TV is then connected to the projector. The projector is showing it over here on the wall. So that's a computer as well. So anything that's processing commands like that, that's a computer. So it's not just this laptop and that desktop. It can be almost anything.
What's the difference between the smart TV and the Apple TV?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A smart TV is something that is a physical television, and it has a lot of apps built into it. The Apple TV is literally just this little black box that connects to an existing television. So the name is a little confusing. So the Apple TV is not an actual television. It's not like that Samsung. That's a Samsung television over there. Apple TV is a device that connects to it that has all of those apps built in. And a lot more than what, it has. I think they have about 30 different applications that are available for it, like Netflix and Hulu. There's an NFL application, there's an ESPN application, there's iTunes built into it, there's all sorts of really cool things. So, yeah. All right, so let's go over some of the differences between some, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, if you have questions like you did earlier, shout them out. This is a group. This is a group exercise, okay? So don't be shy. So desktops. We're going to go over kind of some of the differences between some of those computers we just talked about. So a desktop. Does anybody have a desktop versus a laptop? Okay. So a desktop is a great option. I actually have a desktop myself. I'm selling my laptop. I've had a Mac for forever. This is my work computer, but I have a desktop at home just because I like to have a really big screen. That's a great way to, that's how I use it. So the concept of it, it's used for work, school, and home. Desktops usually set on a desk, hence the name. Generally used with peripherals such as a mouse and a keyboard. So whereas a laptop would have a mouse or a trackpad or the keyboard built in, the desktop is most likely separate. Design. Desktops come in tower form or all-in-ones. So an all-in-one would be Apple's iMac, for example. All of the information, all of the processing power is built in just behind the screen. Whereas we have, I didn't bring one out here, but the other option would be a tower. So the tower would have all the processing power built into it. It's usually a little rectangular thing about that tall. And that would connect to a display, a monitor, that would also connect to a mouse and a keyboard. Apps, desktop applications are also known as programs. Sources for apps include the Apple Store and Microsoft Windows Store. So this is one thing that there's a lot of confusion with this, and people didn't used to call them apps until Apple came out with the iPhone. An app is a program, like we said right over there. An app is short for application. An application is a program. A program is also known as software. They're all just slang terminology. They're just different names for the exact same thing. So if anybody's had a computer, a personal computer for years and years, if you remember back in the day, we used to have to get all of the different programs and software on CDs or little floppy disks. It's the exact same idea. The difference is that we can download them from the Apple Store or the Windows Store. You can still buy those CDs with some of that information, but those are few and far between anymore. So it's one thing that I've noticed is there's a lot of confusion about what exactly an app is. So an app on your iPhone, for example, would be what's the last one that I use? Like my email, that's an app. The email that we were just looking at on the phone, that's an application. If you got Shazam, does anybody have Shazam? That's one of my favorite ones. Yeah, does everybody know what that is? Shazam is an application that if you had music playing, you can launch Shazam, it will listen to the song, it will tell you who is singing that song. It's amazing. I have no idea how it works, but it's incredible. That's one of my favorites. That's an application. On the computer, I'm using an application called Keynote. That's similar to PowerPoint. It's Apple's version of PowerPoint, basically. So an application it has a number of different names. It's all different names for the exact same thing, though. Okay. All right. And finally, users. Desktop users do not require mobility. Often, desktops offer more value or bang for buck compared to laptops. So this is something we can definitely dive in more if somebody needs it. If anybody's in the market for a desktop versus a laptop, that's something we'd be happy to sit down with you and kind of go over some of the pros and cons of each. But for the most part, that is the point of having a desktop, is that you don't need to take it with you. Because most of the time it's going to be too big. It's not really worth dragging it around everywhere. Whereas with a laptop, it can sit on your lap, and this thing weighs about 3 pounds, so you can take it with you just about anywhere you want to go. That kind of leads us pretty well into laptops. Let's go over some of the ideas of that. Laptops are convenient, business-friendly, and provide great mobility. Laptops are designed to be used almost anywhere. Laptops are great for students and people who travel a lot for work, whether it's for work or for pleasure. Just to give you an example, we use laptops almost exclusively here at Neighborhood Nerds. We have one desktop computer that is what Linda uses, but Linda also has her own laptop as well. It's just that we're out on the go so much. We're coming out to your homes and we're fixing things for you and traveling around so much. Having a desktop wouldn't really be very easy for us. So it's great for students as well. That's probably a vast majority of the laptop market. Seems like it goes to students just so they can be taking notes in class and doing things like that. So design, built-in battery, screen, trackpad, and keyboard provide convenience and portability, so you can take everything with you. It's pretty nice. Apps. Laptop applications are in the same category as desktop apps. Like desktop apps, they're operating system dependent. So let me explain that a little bit more. So the same application, so I'm using, like I said, I'm using Keynote here on my MacBook Air. This exact same application, I have it on my desktop at home. There's no difference. There is a difference when you start looking at having that same application on an iPad or an iPhone, because those are operating system dependent. So there's the mobile operating system for iPhone and iPad. There's the computer operating system for the Mac. There's the Windows operating system for the desktop. There's also the Windows mobile operating system for tablets and smartphones. Then there's the Android operating system. So that's when it gets a little more in-depth and a little more hairy, a little more confusing sometimes. But by and large, you can use the same apps on several different platforms or operating systems.
Do you pay for those separately?
Sometimes. That's very dependent on the situation. So for example, if I Keynote that I'm using on my Mac, I paid for it once. I can put that on my Mac, or excuse me, on my iMac at home with no extra charge. Same thing with an iPhone and an iPad. But if I wanted to get, let's say, what's something that costs money? Angry Birds. Does anybody, or their kids or grandkids play Angry Birds?
What do you pay for that? For everything?
It's like $1 or something to download it. If I downloaded that on my iPhone, I'd pay 99 cents. If I downloaded that to my Android tablet, I'd probably have to pay another 99 cents because they're two separate systems.
If you had the same system with several different devices, does that cost you separately to put it on your?
Generally, no. Generally, no.
Once you own it.
Yep. Actually, absolutely. So, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was going to say, so if I got Angry Birds on my iPhone and I wanted to put that same application on my iPad, I've already paid for it once. I don't have to pay for it again. So in that regard, it makes it a little bit easier. Yeah, go ahead.
Rich, since the laptop is so easily accessible, take advantage of, what is making desktops become more popular now again? There's a resurgence of desktops.
That's a good question. To me, it's always been about user preference, having a desktop versus having a laptop. I think one big thing that a desktop has a fairly large advantage of, let me see if I can go back. There's something that we had.
You can catch up on your TV programs.
Absolutely.
Your desktop these days, and it's going to be all one machine. Real soon you're fighting it out. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's part of the reason I got such a large desktop is because I'm trying to use that to replace my TV. I don't watch a lot of TV, so the little bit that I do watch is mostly on Netflix and Hulu.
Would you sit there at your desk? I mean, I don't watch.
No, it's big enough so that you can sit across the room in a small room.
Yeah.
Yeah, small
Somewhere
room.
I sit and watch.
So you can watch TV on your desktop. You get what?
Assuming no one's sitting at the desk.
No, we have a comfortable chair in our little.
Yeah.
No, I'm
So-
working in the office there.
Yeah. So with the way that I have it set up is my desk is in my bedroom, so I can just kind of lounge on my bed and watch that. Yeah, it's not for everybody. It's dependent on the user. But to kind of go back to what you were asking originally, this is one thing that we put in here is desktops offer more value or bang for buck compared to laptops. So just to give you an example, if you with the iMac that I have versus let's see, actually I'll do this. I'm an Apple guy. I'm kind of through and through. But if you get a small Apple desktop, those start at about $12.99. If you get this comparable in price laptop at about $12.99, you're looking at about, you would lose, let's see, instead of 13-inch screen versus 21-inch screen on the desktop, you would be losing maybe about 60% of the power that you have in there. And that's not really that important for a lot of people. Because when I say power, I'm talking about processing power. We're talking about amount of memory or RAM, which is what a lot of people call it. So you would lose a little bit. Now that's not that important to a lot of people. We don't. I always kind of equate it to having a Ferrari is nice, but if you never go over 40 miles an hour, then what's the point? It's if you're going to drive a fancy sports car, you want to kind of rev it up a little bit. If we're stuck in traffic and never go over 30 or 40 miles an hour, then what's the point of having that massive engine?
But if you're going to be downloading movies and such, you're going to need all that extra stuff. And basically,
Absolutely.
the more you can do, the more memory you're going to need.
Yeah.
So you're going to want as much.
That's a great point.
For speed and for
that's a great point.
moving longer things.
That's a great point. So that's where I keep saying this, but that's what it's something that I really mean. It's very dependent on the user. It's very dependent on how you use it and you use it versus how I use it. So that's why I don't say, well, this is how I do it, so this is how you should do it. It depends on how you want to use all of your devices.
But I think it's going to be irrelevant. You're going to want whatever's out there.
Yeah,
when the TV and the computer merge, that's all one machine.
Yeah.
You're going to need massive power and then running whatever else to download those videos and shows and
that's a great point.
Anything. And so the guy that can provide you that cheapest price is going to.
That's a great point.
Take more going.
That's a great point. A lot of even the smaller computers like this, the MacBook Air, has definitely lower processing power. It still does everything that I need it to do on a regular basis because on this I'm not downloading movies. I'm not streaming all sorts of things. I use this for work. So when I'm using it in a work sense and I'm using it for very basic functions, this is absolutely more than I need. It does more than it does the trick and then some. But if I did want to start streaming videos and I wanted to start downloading all of those movies and I wanted something, if I wanted to, get into Photoshop and web design and all sorts of fun things like that I don't know how to do at all. But let's say I did want to go into that, I'd probably use my desktop for that just because it has more power. So it's all dependent on what you're doing with it. But I think by and large, the desktop is a better value. If you don't need that mobility. That's the big kicker, is if you need to be mobile with it, if you like to take your computer to go to the coffee shop, if you like to take it to the library, if some people like to take it to the beach, I don't know why you'd ever want to do that, but that's to each their own. Some people need that mobility built in. Like Tommy, for example, Tommy and myself, if we had desktops, we would be half as efficient as what we are. There's so many things that we wouldn't be able to do because we wouldn't be able to take these devices to your home and troubleshoot and fix things. So, sorry, do you have something else?
Well, what's happening now too is that the iPad is taking over from the.
Yep, absolutely. We're going to talk about that in a minute too.
Can you add an external? When you said you switching back to the desktop, you like a big screen. Can you put an external big screen to
absolutely.
The laptop?
Yes,
I've
absolutely.
seen that a lot recently.
Absolutely.
I know, what are these people with a laptop and a big monitor?
Yep.
And obviously, why do they need both of those?
Yeah.
And you're doing it everywhere where I work.
You're absolutely right. That's a great point, and that's always something I recommend to people is that if you need that portability, but when you're sitting at your desk, at your office, if you need a bigger screen, that's a great option. So for example, this other display that's over here in the corner, that's about a 17, 19-inch little flat screen monitor. Tommy sits there when he's actually in the office. Tommy sits there, hooks that up to his computer, and he uses that bigger screen. So that's a personal preference. So you can absolutely do that with virtual. I've never seen a laptop that doesn't have that capability. Sometimes you need an adapter here or there, but for the most part, it's almost straight across the board. You can absolutely do that. Or you can even get real fancy and take everything that you have on here and connect it to your Apple TV and things like that. But
so could you use stuff you've got on there to a bigger screen, a bigger monitor?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
a friend of mine has to go abroad, and
Mhm.
he's got maybe all his images and everything on the laptop. So he goes to a hotel, and they loaned out the whole projection system to somebody else.
Yeah,
So his problem is, how do you get a bigger picture?
sure.
Could you project what you've got? You need this whole other system to project what's there. But you could use that on a large TV screen, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
Project all your images through the TV screen. So maybe a solution for him would be just a big flat screen TV somewhere.
Yeah.
And then he hooks that up to it. And you can even do that with just a cable, is that correct?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
not have to deal with.
No, you don't need something like the Apple TV. In most cases, you could just get what they call an HDMI cable. That's the high definition. I forget what the M and I stand for, but HD stands for high definition. It's a specific cable that would connect to this, plug into the back of your TV or one of these nice monitors, and then you could use that as your little display. A television would be the same thing. You just need a good cable to connect to it,
Right.
and you could make that a lot larger. Or I could even, if I didn't need that projector right up there, if I was projecting that way, I could connect this directly to the projector if I wanted to.
Right.
Yeah, so
Or
there's lots of
TV
options.
set.
Yep, absolutely.
Like when we have ladies groups.
Oh yeah,
You got 20 ladies and you want them to see.
absolutely.
What you've got there, just hook the cable from that to your HDMI. on.
Absolutely.
We did this once.
Do they call that hot wire?
No,
That's
I guess some people could call that. I don't know if that'd be 100% accurate. Hot wiring to me means that you're kind of messing around with things and you're kind of rigging it in a way that's not meant to be rigged. With this, it's really you're just transferring the view. Yeah, transferring information over. So.
Well, it seems as though it's very confusing that to have a desktop, laptop, and so forth. You can use the larger screen, and most everyone has a television that they can download movies to.
Sure. And that's
What don't you need?
that's why I keep saying this, and I kind of sounded like a broken record, but it's user dependent. It's based on what your situation is. We would never say, yes, everybody in here, all 6 of you, you all need this and this and this and this, and then you'll be set. Because not everybody's going to use their technology in the same way. So some people, like I said, like to take their computer to the beach. Some people barely even use their computer. Some people only use their iPad. Some people only use
your. What's possible.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you say take it to the beach, you don't mean take it to the beach.
Some people take their laptops and sit on the beach.
Right, but see, like we're going to the beach next week, well, I'm taking my laptop,
Okay.
because I want it in the house.
Yes.
You know.
Not sitting in a cabana in the sand. To each their own, but I just. Yeah.
Can you do this with an iPad too?
Absolutely.
Can you project from your iPad?
Absolutely, and that's a good segue into, we're kind of talking about mobile devices, the next part that we're going to talk about. For the most part, you can do a lot of the same things with anymore. The iPad and different tablets have become so much more powerful than they used to be. And the iPad's only been around for almost 5 years, 4.5 years, which doesn't seem real for some reason. It seems like it's been around so much longer. But I could take my iPhone and project whatever I have on here to that Apple TV. If I had the right cable, I could connect it to one of these displays, do that exact same thing.
What about your TV?
Yeah, absolutely.
That magic sword.
Yep, absolutely. I've done that before. I've actually, I for a while I had a little cable that to show my grandmother photos. Because obviously, I mean, looking on a screen that's only about 4 inches diagonally, it gets a little difficult. So I actually got a cable that would connect to her television, so I could scroll through and say, oh, this is me when I went to Mexico. This is me when I was in California, things like that. So.
This is what we need a class on, a cable for this and another class, a cable, how to connect to that.
Well, that's
Each thing.
you guys have lots of great ideas, and you keep beating me to the punch. If you have feedback on other classes that you want to see, and if you have specific questions, let us know. This is part of the reason that we like doing these tech talks, because it gets everybody's minds working.
Because unless you actually see you do that, it's awfully hard for you to tell me how to connect the cable, and
I
I
understand.
don't remember.
I completely understand.
I almost have to get a new TV because mine only has 2 HDMI slots.
There's
on it.
a solution for that too, but we can talk about that later. Go ahead.
Just like everything.
You're controlling the Apple TV with an app, aren't you?
I am. Well, actually, I'm controlling the Apple TV because of a system that's built into my Mac, which technically is a piece of software or a program or an app. It's called AirPlay. So AirPlay is an Apple. Yeah, that's what AirPlay is. AirPlay is a system that allows you to connect Apple devices wirelessly. So, for example, AirPlay would be the same way that I would connect my phone to that Apple TV. Be the same way that I would connect I'm connecting my Mac to the Apple TV. There's a lot of different features that you can use.
AirPlay is on your iPhone.
AirPlay, yeah, it's in all Apple devices. All Apple devices built after 2011 or 12, one of those.
So I bought a new
But we,
iPhone to do that.
Yep.
We have a lake house, and we didn't want to have to get cable there.
Yeah.
And so we got wireless there, and we have sling box.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we and the sling box is something that attaches to your cable at home,
Mm-hmm.
and then get apps on your phone or your iPad to basically to access onto your TV if you have it attached to Roku or Apple, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
To watch
So Sling,
Sling box.
so it's slinging the data
It's
from
slinging
your
the data.
home to
Exactly.
your lake house?
Like I said, it
Without-
sling it anywhere,
Anywhere.
anywhere.
Yeah.
In the country, out of the country, wherever.
Yeah.
You can watch everything that's on your television at home?
That's wild.
And your phone, you can make long distance phones and phone calls from
No,
everything.
it's not that, the phone,
No.
it's just there's an app on the phone that you can put it onto the television.
Exactly. I see a lot of bewildered faces that didn't even know that was possible. It's don't feel don't feel overwhelmed, because there's a lot of things that we haven't even heard of yet that are out there. So it's constantly a catch-up game.
And I just saw that they were making a Sling TV now.
Yeah. Honestly, when I'm here, I spend about an hour of my day, cumulative, I spend about an hour of my day reading different websites, trying to keep up on all of these things. So that's part of the reason that we're here, so we try to keep up on it, and so we can tell you about them and come up with all these really great solutions for how to, for your technology needs. But it's always a catch-up game, so don't feel overwhelmed. It's just, it is what it
Well, we're
is.
paying hundreds of dollars a month to AT&T.
And
Mhm.
that was the concept, is that you're paying for it already.
Yeah.
Right.
Why not be able to access it
But
everywhere?
technically,
Yeah.
you're not at your house.
Yep.
And so, you're just, so the downside to it is that if you have somebody at your house at the same time that you're someplace else, you all have to watch the same
Same thing. Well,
So there's downsides to everything. All right, we still have a few more slides. Let's keep moving along, but this discussion is great. If you guys have more questions, again, don't be shy. So, okay, talking about mobile devices, we already touched on this a little bit, but yes, these are also computers. Mobile device, tablets, smartphones, that would also include like an iPod, for example. That's also considered a mobile device. So the key characteristics of those: touchscreen, no keyboard, plethora, it's a great word, plethora of app choices. There's a lot more app choices for mobile devices like an iPad or an Android phone, things like that, than what you would have on your computer. Convenient use anywhere, and to be able to unlock your computing. And what we kind of mean by that is to be able to unlock, to be able to have a little more versatility. To be able to versatile in terms of being able to be mobile, and versatile and also what you can do with it. So, all right. So, real quick, this is one of Tommy's favorite parts. Like I said, he's a computer science major. A brief history of the computer, how it all began. So, Actually, the first computer was actually, let's see, Charles Babbage actually designed the first mechanical computer in 1822. I'm familiar with this a little bit, but basically it was a really fancy calculator. It was about all it could do. But basically you would give it an input and it would give you an output of something. It was very, very rudimentary, very, very simple, but it was in 1822, which is kind of mind-blowing. It was almost 200 years ago. 1946, electronic numerical integrator and computer. We have in 1964, the first word processor developed by IBM, transitioned from specialized use to general use. The biggest one is, this is really when everything started to happen to kind of lead us to this point. Everything before that was kind of the precursor, but in 1981, the IBM 5150, the first personal computer, the PC, is born. And this is something that I always like to point out to folks. PC stands for personal computer. So I think one thing that I don't care for that Apple did about 10 years ago is they had all of those "Hi, I'm a Mac" and "Hi, I'm a PC" commercials. Does anybody remember those? Had the nerdy old-looking guy who was the PC and the hip young-looking guy who was the Mac. They're very effective, but they're a little misleading because a PC is a personal computer. The PC is not operating system specific. This is a personal computer. A desktop is a personal computer. That's all that it is. So PC does not necessarily mean that it's a Windows computer. Okay? So that happened in 1981. And then in 2010, the next major shift to go into mobile devices was when the iPad was launched. Mobile tablet computing was around, but the iPad took it to new levels of success. I don't know if anybody remembers, I think Apple had the Newton that came out, and there were Palm Pilots and things like that. Those were kind of, those were kind of precursors to having tablets. But the iPad is basically the first one that really, it's kind of set it off and set it out to the masses and gave us what we have today. So, and one thing I always like to point out to people is, if we look at this, if the first personal computer that was really meant for home use to do a lot of what we need on a day-to-day basis, not just major, rooms full of computers like they used to have that would just do really rudimentary functions, the kind of thing that you have sitting on your desk and can help you do your taxes and things like that, or can help you write a letter. That's only been around for 33 years. So if you put that into comparison, the iPad has been around for not even 5 years yet. So one thing I always like to tell people is that if they've only been around for 33 years, that's a relatively new invention. It's not like having a car. Cars have been around over 100 years. But I guarantee you, within the first 5 or 6 years of having a car, there were hundreds of thousands of people who would look at that and say, I have no idea what that is, I don't want it, I'm never going to use one, I'm terrified of it, because they just didn't quite understand it. 33 years is not a long time in the grand scheme of things. So I would just kind of point that out to people. We have so many people that come in and say, oh, I'm technologically illiterate. Well, yeah, maybe, but in your defense, that's not that long ago. If you don't know how to use your iPad, don't feel bad. It's okay. I still don't know everything that the iPad does. So that's just kind of me standing on my soapbox for a minute. It's just something I always try to point out to people, that you don't have to know everything about how all these work. It's still new. They're still evolving every single day. What we're using, when you look at original iPad that came out in 2010, that thing just looks like a dinosaur at this point. It weighs like 4 pounds. It's still useful, but compared to what it can do, the iPad can do now, it's almost night and day. They barely even resemble each other sometimes. So yeah. So anyway, that's my little aside that I always like to tell everybody. So let's talk about PC versus Mac, and then we're going to have a little bit of time for more questions. So PC versus Mac, IBM and Windows. So it used to be there was an IBM operating system. IBM, it was very brief. Mostly they just made the computers. Windows by Microsoft was the operating system. So multiple manufacturers, Windows-based operating system, support from vendors, and pricing for all budgets. Then there's Apple, who makes the Mac OS, or operating system. That is, only Apple makes Macs. Runs Mac OS, OS 10 Mavericks, which is 10.9. That's the newest. Primary support through Apple. Cheapest Mac starts at about $599, but if you're looking to get into a laptop or something that has an all-in-one machine, it's closer to about $900. It's definitely a higher end, but it's a higher end product, and depending on what your needs are, maybe one's better, maybe the other's better. So the PC and the Mac, again, we call it the PC. That's not the most accurate way to do it, but that's kind of the accepted verbiage at this point. All right, so some basics on computer components. All right, power buttons, power cord, monitor, ports, mouse and keyboard. Those are all, this might sound a little bit reviewy, but we're going to talk about it real quick anyway. So power buttons, obviously we know what that does. Power cord, that could be something that could be included in some, or a charging cable, kind of like what I have hooked up to my MacBook right here. Monitor, we talked about that. See, I told you guys, you kept beating me to the punch on all these great questions that you had. Ports, mouse and keyboard, these are all options. They could be useful, maybe they're not, maybe they're built in, maybe they're not, but they're all part of that spectrum. So, and we already talked about this just a little bit, but what can computers do? Digital printing, presentation design like I'm doing right here, photography, retouching, business applications, online marketing, music, videos, multimedia. We've touched on almost all of those at this point. So that's kind of brings me back to my initial question is what is a computer and how do you use a computer? There's no wrong answer. A computer is whatever you make of it, whether it's whether it's chatting with your friends and family, or whether it's like some of my friends who do crazy stuff like photography or retouching that I have no idea. Actually, I have a friend that's his primary job is to retouch wedding photos, and he tells me about it. And he sounds like he's he touches up wedding photos and makes them look even better. And when he starts talking to me about it, I have no idea what he's talking about. Sometimes that's a completely different world. But for most of us, it's going to be basic, really basic stuff, and that's okay too. So it's however you use it. So that's pretty much everything that I had to say. A couple other things that I did want to go over real quick. I don't know if everybody's on different social media. If anybody's on Twitter, we are at NNerdsKnox. Facebook, we are at Neighborhood Nerd. And on Google Plus, does anybody have a Google Plus account? It's a different social media outlet. It's good for certain things. But if you type in plus SH Nerd, SH, by the way, stands for Sequoia Hills. That's how we start off, is just being Sequoia Hills Nerds. So last thing that we'll talk about real quick here.
So Google has social media going on like Facebook? Yeah,
they do. It's really, really similar. It's used more in a business sense. And it's a little more...
Google Groups or something?
Yep, that's part of it. Google. That's just one of the many, many products that Google makes. Google Plus is one of them.
Are they slamming you with ads on that one too, like Facebook's doing?
Not as much.
Lately?
Not as much, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I wish there was an answer for that. So, all right, so that's all for our presentation. I did want to show you one other thing here. There we go. So this is something to, excuse me. Okay, so upcoming tech talks. Let me find them. Yeah, so some upcoming tech talks that we have. We already did computer basics on Tuesday and then today. The next one that we have coming up is this coming Tuesday, September 9th at 10 a.m. That is going to be Tech Speak, defining the basics. So basically what that is, we talked a lot about that. What is a PC? What is a Mac? What's an operating system? What's a mobile device? We're going to go through and we just have this huge list of different tech speak, or nerd speak, or however you'd like to say it. And we're going to go through and define a lot of these different things. Like, I'll add this to my list. What is an HDMI cable? What does it do and what does it mean? I don't remember what all of that means. I don't remember what all of that stands for other than high definition. So I'll look that up. I'm going to add that to my list, actually. Yeah, it's something interface or input. I don't know. I feel like I should probably know that, but I'm going to research it. Also, we don't have it on our calendar, but on Tuesday, I think somebody brought this up earlier about the new iPhone that should be announced. That's also Tuesday. It's going to be
Wednesday. Is that true or false?
Well, actually, let me get to that. So on Tuesday is when the actual announcement is. The presentation is going to be starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time, which is 1 o'clock Eastern. They'll be doing the presentation in California. We're actually going to have it up on the projector, and we're going to watch the whole thing live here in the shop. You're welcome to come join us. We'll probably have some snacks and you know, some coffee and, you know, drinks and things like that. 1 o'clock on Tuesday. It is usually about 2 to 3 hours long, so we'll be kind of drifting in and out of some of it. You're welcome to watch any and all of it with us. If you prefer to watch it at home, you can actually just go to Apple's website and find it that way. We are anticipating that they will be announcing a new iPhone and possibly 2 new iPhones of different sizes. Some other things they could be talking about is the new mobile operating system for the iPhone and the iPad. Also talking about the new operating system for the Mac. They could be releasing what they call the iWatch, which has been people are very excited about that.
already has one of those.
What's that?
A competitor.
There are actually several of them.
Because I went to the AT&T store and this young man had a watch bag.
Absolutely. They refer to those as Android Wear. It's made by multiple manufacturers that will connect with an Android smartphone.
So all that does is take your pulse, or does it?
It does a lot of things, actually. It can do more than that, but it's meant for health purposes. It can also be basically, instead of if you feel your phone vibrate, you could always pull your phone out, unlock it, go into your messages, and do whatever you need to do. Or the idea is that there's a connection between what you're wearing on your wrist versus what you have in your pocket, and you can just look at that screen and say, oh, I just got a text message from my mom. She says, call me. Okay, great. I can reply to her and just say, okay, call you soon.
So is
Things
the
like
lettering
that.
going this way across the band?
It would be going vertical like that instead of
Then you only get
sideways.
a couple of letters, a couple
It
words.
depends on how big it is, but we can, yeah, there's a lot of options. So anyway, so we're going to watch the whole presentation here. We're going to try to watch as much of it as possible, depending on what other nerd priorities we have. But we're going to try to do that. We are also then on Wednesday, as somebody already pointed out, everything we know about the iPhone 6. So this is us we're kind of guessing. What's that? Yeah, well, we're guessing that there's going to be an iPhone release. If there's not an iPhone release, then we're going to scramble and we're going to come up with a new presentation. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to watch the presentation on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, for anybody that wants to come in at 10 a.m., then we're going to go over everything that they talked about and go as in-depth as possible and try to explain it. I think everybody here has at least one Apple product that I can see. So this could be very useful for everybody here. Again, please tell everybody that you know if they want to come join us. But one thing I also like to point out to everybody, this is all on our website. It's shnerd.com/calendar. One thing that kind of confuses people that we're going to try to fix is you can scroll up and down on the page. You can also move your cursor right over here to where these are, and you can scroll up and down in this little box. That's something we're going to fix so that it's a little more clear, because right now it just looks like that's all that we have. But you can also see over here on the calendar. Yeah, we're gonna fix that in some fashion. So we have a number of them. I think the last one is on December 6th. Yeah, and actually these are really helpful. We're gonna have several of these about photo management and also holiday gift guide and holiday cards. We're gonna start that at the beginning of November. So if you need help making your holiday cards, obviously that's something that we can do on a one-to-one basis. We also offer this as more of a group kind of an overview on how to do that. That's something we've had a lot of people really, really fired up about that, about trying to make that whether on whatever computer or device they have.
They make calendars for the coming year.
Yeah, that's actually, I think that's part of the list in the Be the Coolest Santa holiday gift guide TikTok.
I did that a couple years ago.
I still do that a lot for my mother, actually, because she has 10 grandchildren. So I like to put, with different programs, you can actually make calendars, have everybody's birthday in there because she's getting forgetful.
Right.
And put different pictures of all of her grandchildren, things like that. So that's been pretty fun. So if you would like to register for one of those classes, I'm not sure if you registered this way already, you can click register now right here. We do ask that you please sign up just because it gives us
What's about the e-ticket, the print the ticket?
That's really only, you don't have to print it. That's only for the people who are not members. As a member, we just ask that you click on register now, and then you at least just say, hey, I'm coming, just so we have an accurate count. Also so that we shouldn't be a problem, but we don't want to have 30 people in here. We just don't have that kind of space, and that gets to be too many people. We try to keep it to about 10 or 12 max. But you know, depending, and closer to the holidays, we might get some more on some of those. But for the most part, we try to keep it pretty small, so we can all have nice conversations like that. So
can you tell us
yeah,
one more thing about the new operating system? They're going to throw a new operating system on all their devices, then they're going to stop supporting all my old devices, or something.
hold that thought. I'm going to end my broadcast, and we're going to talk about that, okay? So I'm actually, this is kind of like we were talking about. We've been recording this whole thing, so we, you know, so I'm gonna end this, and then we're gonna talk a little bit more. So,
Okay.
All right. So long, everybody at home. See you in the shop soon.